For our January studies, we're going to move on to beautiful sunsets. My inspiration for this one was this incredible sunset. We're not going to do it exactly like that because those color mixes are a bit hard to do. And I do always like to see a bit of blue in the top of a sunset. It just helps make the sunset pop, that contrast. Got some Bauhung paper, cold pressed. I've made a horizon line here. Is about, I don't know, a quarter of the paper probably. Because the sky is the important part here, we're just going to make sure it has the majority of the picture. And then once the top has dried, we're going to take the paint off and we're going to do the silhouette on the water of that beautiful sky. In order to do this, we're going to use a bigger brush this time. Use this brush here. It's a Skoda 18. It is a synthetic brush, but it does hold a lot of water to do this exercise. And the whole benefit of this exercise is getting things to blend and bleed and water control, etc. We will mix colors as well. Wet our paper, wet our palette so that our colors are woken up. All right, so I've mixed up my colors. I've got a rainbow of colors here. I have Hansa yellow, gamboge, I have some quin rose, and I have pyrrole, and anthraquinine blue and cobalt blue. Those are the colors that we're going to use. I may need a bit more of these reds. I think we're ready, and then we're going to use this big brush here. We don't have too many things to paint around, although it would make sense to have a highlight in the sky where the sun is peeking through. I'm just going to take a Kleenex and decide where that's going to be. Let's say somewhere in this area here. When I get to that spot, it's going to be the only dry spot on the paper. Let me just make sure I know where that is. I'm going to wet around it, and while I'm there I may as well wet the majority of this down here and up here, just so we have some dampness on the paper as it's kind of dried there. So I think that's good. I'm going to start with the cobalt, and I'm just going to apply that very lightly at the top of the sky. Probably don't have enough water on my brush to spread that around, so let's try that again. And then I'm going to start going into my anthraquinine blue as well, and just fill in where I want that to go. I'm leaving a little bit of gap there because I might put a bit of pink in there to my quin rose. And I'm trying to make a bit of motion here where it has this downward slope here. Maybe put a dash of anthraquinine up there as well, just to give it a nice texture. And then I'm going to rinse my brush, squeeze it out so that it's got clean water in it mainly. And now I'm going to switch to just the quin rose. And I might have to water that down a little bit. I want this part of the sky to still be kind of flowing. And I tilt my paper a little bit. Probably now on a 30 or 40 degree slant there. Okay, and I add a lot of water into that spot right there. Start giving it a bit of an orange tinge. Coming in with my gamboge. Okay, it's lighter on this side and darker on this side here. Okay, and then I'm going to add into that some of this pyrrole red, a few darker spots. And then I'm just checking to see, I should be coming up to that spot what we marked off as the dry area. And I can't really see it, so I'm just going to make it. Okay. This is a spot that is showing through I want it to have the right shape. I might just take my synthetic brush and maybe soften that edge a little bit. Okay, so that's good. I'm gonna go back into my anthraquinone, which is gonna create a really dark purple. Okay, so now we're going into quite a bit of dark down here at the horizon. And then I want to just give it a little bit of orange to brighten it up. Mix my gamboge, maybe a bit of my lemon, and this orange is going to go in over here as well. And I might put a little bit of a stripe there so that this spot looks brighter. And then we're just going to go in, I'm going to go into my lemon yellow once again. Pick that up. And I might put a streak of orange right up here too. We really want that white of the paper to show up there. As long as I'm still wet enough here, which I think I am, is get a little bit more Quin Rose up here. I could go darker over here as well. Okay, try not to get green though, so every time that I see green, I just have to add more red to it. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go with that. I'm gonna have a bit darker here. I want some purple in this part, and I'm not getting purple out of that, but and let's make sure it gets jiggy with it. Cover my spot where I've got the sun and just spritz the rest of it. And that'll get it moving, and we may have to soften this edge here, but as soon as we wet it, it's going to start running down. So I'm just trying to be careful there. See if I can get it to show up a bit. If I wipe out some other areas there, it might help soften that as well. We'll see how that works. You're going to get a few puddles along this tape line. You can just collect those with a damp brush. Use it as a sponge to sponge up all that stuff. Now we have to wait till this dries. You may have to watch this part here. Let's let it dry, and then we'll take the tape off and move on to the reflection in the water. Okay, I've taken the tape off this one, and we're going to do the water. The first step is to wet it down. And I'm going to leave a small border between the sky and the water. And we're going to leave it, we'll probably go back over it and darken the color possibly, but I just want to have that border in case we need it, and then we'll go from there. Just want to replicate the colors that I have here. Let's just start by applying some of this color on here. I want some orange going down to that border that I created. So I'm just going very careful along here to leave the tiniest bit of white. And that's probably good enough. And then I've got some purple in there. Kind of goes like this, up this way, maybe a little down there. I need to put some red in there. Okay, and a bit more red towards the top as well. Okay, and then some pink, Queen Rose. Okay, like so. Maybe a bit more Queen Rose. So it's not very rose. Oops, I got my brush into the green. Okay, let's see if we can get that in. And then we have a little bit of cobalt that we can add at the top here. The only thing we didn't do is we didn't take out where the sun would be reflected. So my paper is warping and I did not tape it down here. And what I might do before I even start that is just take a Kleenex, fold it over, and try to get some of that white out. And then take my brush it's not going as well as I would like it to. And then what I can do is darken it further here. A little bit more of that purple. And a little bit more blue, I think. Okay, and a little bit more red. Okay. It's looking very dark compared to the sky at this point, but not to worry. It will fade out quite a bit. Okay, I just can't get that purple in there. Try some imperial purple here. And then we've got to soften this edge here. And this I'm going to soften because this is going to be covered with trees over here. And I don't want that showing through. Welcome back. We've done our sky. We've done a little border around here. And now we're going to paint in some land masses here in a very, very dark color. And at this point, you can probably tape it down if you want so that it doesn't move around while you're doing your painting. All right, so I've mixed up a black. I have fresh neutral tint on my palette. It's a very thick mixture. You can see how sticky that is. That's probably close to a butter or cream mixture. And then I have some burnt sienna on orange. And then I have some yellow here. So in areas that we might want to highlight, we'll use those colors. I'm going to start with my Escoda Perla brush because I can get lots of paint on it and lots of accuracy. And I'm just going to start at the bottom here and fill it in. Don't worry if it's not exact to your line. You can fix that as we go through it. And then as I get closer to where the brightness is, I'm going to add a little bit of that brown to it so that it lightens it up. And then I'm going to go back here, create my landmass, make it look kind of interesting, up and down maybe. And then back to that brown here. And then I'm just going to go a bit further out here. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush. And then I'm going to take that brown that I had and just put a bit more of it out this way. Okay. And then back to my black, which has to be very dark. And now just making sure that this line here is nice and straight. And that's our landmass. Okay. All right, and then we have another little island that we're going to do over here. And I'm going to start that island with the brown. And we're going to do this one right on the horizon. But it's further in the distance, so it's going to be a bit faded. Okay. I'm going to put a tiny dash of the dark in there, just over on this side. Maybe we have a little bump on this side. Okay. And then rinse my brush again, wipe it off, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow over on this side. If it's too light and it blends into, you can add some more brown. Okay, so that's a little island in the distance. It's always good to have a few birds, especially if you have some marks that you made. Okay, different sizes is good. Let's have one up here. The further up in the sky they are, the bigger they are, because they're actually closer to you, typically in that situation. And we'll do one more here. I think that's all right. Actually, I'm going to do one more thing with this because I find this white here is a little bit too stark. So I'm just going to calm that down a little bit. And I notice that I have a little mark here. So I'm just going to put that like that. And then because it's so white there, I don't necessarily want this to be the star of the show. So I'm going to just take some yellow. And go along there. I can leave a tiny bit of white, but not much. And then to blend that in more, I'm going to take a tiny bit of this orangey brown. Okay. And go over that one more time. So it's still, the horizon is still lighter back there. Thank you very much for joining, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in the next one.